something hilarious your kid has done that, as a parent, you weren't allowed to laugh at or be proud of. Story 1. My daughter is 4 years old, and we just lost Grandma. So I'm having a somber discussion with her about the situation and tell her that Grandma died. She looks at me with her huge watery eyes, blinks, and says like Mario, really not supposed to laugh when teaching your preschooler about death, but I did. Edit, thank you for the gold. And all your kind words. Story 2, there are so many, but the latest one, my daughter 5 years was delaying climbing into the bath for the evening routine. My wife, thoroughly exasperated, starts losing patience, and the voice tone borders on yelling. My little one looks up at her and deadpan delivers the following line, Mom. In going, calm your... I don't know what was funnier, the comment or the look on my wife's face. It was priceless. To add to it, one guess where my daughter heard that expression, yip from the wife. I had to leave the room. Wow. This blew up. Thanks all. I now need to tell my daughter that her cheekiness has won her an internet gold medal. You peaked too soon, little light. Too soon. Story 3. When my 3-year-old put himself in timeout at daycare because he figured out if he was in timeout, he didn't need to help clean up. And then the following year when we got an incident report because he yelled, damn it, when the fitted sheet he was trying to put on his cot kept popping off. Story 4. When my daughter was about 3, she was trying to slide at the McDonald's play place, and this bigger approximate 7 to 9-year-old girl shoved her, trying to go in front of her, and my girl just socked her. I think it was just a knee reaction, cause she had never been physically bullied in any way. And at that point, I was fairly confident she never would be going forward, either LMAO. Story 5. My entire family is born and raised in Minnesota. My mom's husband was Italian from Manhattan, so he had the accent mannerisms that was like he was a good fella. My brother Paul always gave him because of his accent and mimicked him constantly. So one day, we're hanging out outside in the backyard, and my daughter, who was 4 at the time, goes up to my brother and says, Uncle Paulie, watch this, and she walked over to a pile of dog and perfectly nailed the posture, hand gesture, and accent, and goes with his thigh eyes edit thanks to the gold. I'm showing my daughter this when she gets home from school edit. This is one of my favorite pics of her. Story 6. My son was not quite 2. Waited at the mall for pictures with the Easter Bunny, but he gets a little nervous when the moment comes. The Easter Bunny hands him a little rubber ducky, which my son is thrilled about. The bunny hands another to him, but as my kid reaches for it, the bunny snatches it back and pats his lap in a clear gesture, you can have another ducky if you sit on my lap. My son looked at the duck he already had in his hand, chucks it at the Easter Bunny, and literally storms off. He was so offended. I've never seen a baby that mad. Bullshit Easter Bunny tactics. My younger sister was given an assignment to draw a picture of what life would be like without government. She ended up drawing an entire comic book of naked, anatomically correct hippies running around with machine guns. The school called my dad, and when they showed him the comic while threatening to suspend her, my dad burst into laughter at home. He gently told my sister that what she did was highly inappropriate, but then framed one of the pages and hung it up in the house. Edit, my sister was probably 7 or 8 years old in elementary school. She made them hippies by giving them head bandanas and beards. Most of the hippies were male, so there were a lot of dicks. My dad is currently looking for it. He moved, so it's in a box somewhere. Edit 2, it's my understanding that most of the other children drew things like eroded buildings, bad roads, sick people, people foraging for food, etc. They were threatening suspension because they had a zero-tolerance policy for guns, including drawing them. Surprisingly, it wasn't the massive amount of dicks. Story 7. When my kids were young, my parents split up due to my father's infidelity. We live on a small farm, and one day we were talking about our chickens. We had a rooster my son had named King, and one of our chickens whom he hung out with a lot was named Queen. Well, King decided he liked a different chicken better, as they often do while we were talking about how King decided he wanted a different girlfriend, just like Grandpa John, my son exclaimed. Yep, he wasn't wrong. Edit, whoa, thanks for the silver, my first. Story 8. I have 3 sons, and there's an age gap. Currently, they're 28, 26, and 16. When 16 was 4 and 26 was 14, they had an incident. See, 14 liked to teach 4 naughty things to say. He taught him things like the peanut monster, which is the tale of how girls become girls. See, the peanuts 4 couldn't pronounce penis monster was to be feared. All babies are born boys, and when you do something really bad, the peanuts monster sneaks in at night, cuts your peanuts off, and leaves you with a vagina, and then you're a girl. So 14 would threaten for that if he told me any of the naughty things he was taught, mostly bad words, the peanuts monster would visit. I found this out when 4 was telling the tale to my neighbor while we were over for coffee. At the end of his story, he leaned over to pat her knee and asked, do you understand now? You did something bad, so now you have a vagina. How that dear woman kept a straight face, he'll never know. But the moment he turned his back, she lost it. Laughed so hard she had tears running down her face. But that's not the end. 14 had a large group of friends over, and 4 was bugging them, as little brothers often do. 14 had to so he was in the bathroom that shared a wall with his room. I heard yelling, so I'm on my way to see what the deal is. 14 is yelling insults from the John at 4, and as I get to the bedroom, I hear 4 yell back, "Hey 14, don't forget to wipe your VA, Gina." All of 14's friends were cracking up. It was hilarious. He deserved it because he taught him that. Story 9, when my son was 4, Jurassic World had just been released on DVD. He loves dinosaurs and doesn't scare very easily, so I thought we would rent it and watch it. Here we were just eating our popcorn, watching our movie, and he was loving it. Then we got to the scene where the dinosaur gets eaten by the gigantic aquatic Cesaurus. Cue my son. What the was that? I was speechless with my mouth to the floor. I finally got my thoughts together enough to ask him what he said. He just looks at me like a deer in the headlights. I had to walk out of the room because I was laughing so hard. We later had a nice conversation. I have twin girls, 6 years old. Last night I was in my room and heard one say something that sounded like a curse word. I asked her what she said, and she told me chips. I'm like, "Oh, that's not what I thought you said." The other twin then prances in my room, smug as, and says, "You thought she said yes." Yes, I did. I had to contain my laughter otherwise. She thinks it's okay for her to say. Story 10, I've told this story before. I will laugh at this memory to the end of my life. My 2 sons are bickering. The youngest picks up a stuffed animal and hits the oldest with it. The oldest says that didn't hurt at all. See, I'm not crying. Well, that must have been a problem for little brother because he went to the toy box and dug around finding a plastic toy hammer. Ran up and Thor-style hit his older brother on the head with it. Then he dropped the hammer and said, "You're crying now." Took everything in my power not to laugh at the absurdity of his indignation and attack. I had to call my mother later so we could laugh about it. Story 11, daughter was maybe 3. In church with my parents, guy across the church had eye surgery and had a patch. During a prayer, she saw him, looked at him, covered her eye, and went on like a pirate. Pastor almost laughed mid-prayer. Story 12, about 3 years ago, I get a call while I'm at work for my daughter's daycare. She was 4. They want to see me. I go down there, and they sit me down in the office with her. She looks upset and sheepish, so I assume she has done something wrong. They start telling me about a situation that she was involved with. On digging deeper, it turns out one. The boy is a biter. Even my daughter has come home with his teeth marks on her back. Not just her, though. Apparently, he bites all the kids. Plenty of complaints were made, but his parents were trash and did nothing. 2, the boy was teasing another little girl a year younger and much smaller than he was. He has bitten her a couple of times already and has her backed into a corner between 2 brick walls. 3, my daughter runs to her aid by putting herself between the boy and the other little girl. In the process, she gives him a stern pushback. 4, boy becomes enraged that he can't sink his teeth in the flesh of the helpless 3-year-old girl and screams, growls, and charges head first teeth bare at the 2 girls. 5, my daughter, cool as a cucumber, sidesteps deftly and pushes okay. She slams his head into the wall. 6, boy shatters 3 front teeth, face pisses blood, and screams like a banshee. My daughter calmly walks away, the other girl in hand, up to a carer, and says that there has been an accident. At this point, I'm doing everything I cannot to cheer and give her a massive high five, but I calmly ask that she goes and wait for me outside. I ask them what the next step is. Is she to get some sort of award or something? I will never forget their faces. Their jaws were wide, and after a few moments, they're like, "Mr. Archinge, you don't seem to understand. This is very serious. The boy's parents are talking about pressing charges." To which I reply, "I understand just fine." My daughter put herself potentially in harm's way to protect a smaller person from ongoing physical abuse from a known serial bully. If you aren't going to present her with an award, then we are done here. If his parents want to press charges, then he'll gladly give them the phone number for my legal counsel. In bluffing, I don't know any lawyers, but I have to wear a suit and tie to work, so I figured I probably look like I know what I'm talking about. LOL, I get up, walk out, put my daughter in the car, and hug the out of her. She had ice cream for dinner that night. Never heard another word about it from the daycare center, and the other boy never came back. Self-kicking dad proud, TLDR, my daughter makes me proud, liberates a daycare from a bully, and potentially establishes a career as a cage fighter at the same time. Story 13, my daughter, 2 years old, still in nappies, says, "Dad, check my nappy." As soon as I pulled the back of the nappy to check, she ripped a massive. I asked, "Did you do that to trick Daddy?" Her answer, "You." Story 14, my coworker was telling us about her 3 years old. He was being really bad, and so she told him she was going to call Santa. She gets out her phone and does the whole spiel with pretending to call Santa and telling him how bad her son is being. After she hangs up, they exchange looks, and she asks if he has anything to say. Call Santa back and tell him I said. She started laughing telling us this story at this point, but then continued that she told him he couldn't say words like that. He looks at her and says, "Well, you can't hear me say this," and he starts mouthing the word in a row. Story 15, call me dude. I taught her how to snowboard. I'm no longer dad. I'm dude when we go to the mountain, and my ex is now bro her mom. My parents were all about respect. Well, this is respect to me, and my heart swells with pride when I hear, "Dude, did you see that?" I was going so fast. Story 16, my kid went through a phase of climbing out of his cot in the mornings, clambering onto our bed, and teabagging his mom. So much for his future therapist to chew on. Story 17, a few years ago, my kids lost their hamster up in their game room. He escaped his exercise bowl, and they couldn't find him. In helping them look for Sammy, I moved the couch and discovered a huge hole. The couch hadn't always been in that spot, but things often got moved around in the playroom during sleepovers, and I never questioned it much. When they realized I found the huge hole in the wall, they started defending each other. I told them that they wouldn't get in trouble, but I needed the guilty party to help me patch up the wall. They agreed to both help. One of them may have accidentally let it slip that it happened when he was playing Nerf gun soccer. No, I don't know the rules of the game since they seem to change every time I ask with friends, but my daughter claims that isn't what happened. They are generally pretty honest kids and have agreed to let me know how it happened before I die. I am glad they stuck up for each other and always have each other's back. The effort to move the couch was also impressive. The hole got fixed regardless, but I really want to know what happened. The hole was massive. Edit Sammy was found safe and sound, but has since died due to unrelated causes. Story 18, not a parent, but I have two younger sisters. When they were ages 3 and 4, my 4-year-old sister was sitting on a kid's ottoman chair, and my 3-year-old sister was trying to sit on her lap. 4-year-old sister takes her foot and pushes her off while at the same time says, "Get thee off the queen." My dad and I both heard it, and our jaws dropped, and it took everything to not laugh. Story 19, when I was a kid, I was being a bit of a brat and whining to my dad about something I couldn't do. I kept saying I can't over and over. My dad jokingly said, "Don't say that. It's a rude word." Now I knew that the C word was a bad word, but I didn't know how bad it was, so I said I'm saying can't. My dad was so shocked. Now as an adult, my dad is always like it was so unexpected. Just this innocent-looking little kid casually dropping the C-bomb like it was no big deal. Story 20, I let my son watch Army of Darkness before his mother thought he was ready for it. He later walked up to her with a toy gun and growled, "Good, bad," and the guy with the gun, I thought it was hilarious. She thought I was being a terrible example. Story 21, my kid excitedly told me today that be saving up the coal he gets for Christmas for a barbecue. When my son was very young, maybe around 4 or 5, he and his dad, my ex-husband, were arguing about something. I can't remember what it was, but I walked in just in time to hear this ex-ugged. "Son, how do you know, son? Because I'm smarter than you, dad." Pause, son, and I'm almost as smart as mom. I had to leave the room. It was hysterical. Story 22, my sister-in-law was playing a board game with my 5-year-old. She was getting bored of playing with him, like she usually does, and so she tried to move the game along a little bit with some creative maneuvers, cheating, thinking he wouldn't notice. He looked at the board for a minute and then blank-faced her and said, "Lindsay, that's bullshit." He also asked his dad, "Do you even know what you're doing?" while he was struggling to put up Christmas lights. Story 23, my 10-year-old acted out quite a lot over Thanksgiving weekend. When we got home, I told him I was keeping a toy he had ordered online at work until he could show us he could behave. He said, "Well, you can keep it for a year, and I can keep living my wonderful life." He's always been hilarious when he's talking back, but you can't let on that he's winning. When he was 3, and ID tried to give him timeouts, he'd try and turn the tables, and push me into the bedroom, close the door on me, shouting, "Dada, your behavior is unacceptable." It took everything I had not to laugh. Story 24, not my kid. My mother's best friend's daughter. She was 5 at the time, and at the local grammar school attending a performance of her older sister's school play. Gets bored during the production, wanders out of her seat and into the hallway, where she promptly spies the fire alarm and pulls the handle. As many of you know, those alarms will squirt indelible ink onto the puller's hand as a way to cut down on false alarms. So obviously it's a false alarm, and the hunt is on. The principal quickly sees Kathleen's purple hands and confronts her about pulling the alarm. Gives her 3 or 4 minutes of grief. All the while, Kathleen is standing there with her arms folded across her chest. Her only reply is, "Legend, gimme a break. You know I can't read." Story 25, wife was driving home with a 5-year-old. "Wife, how was your day?" "Son, good. But I'm tired now." "Wife, did you play a lot?" "Son, nah. The kids at school just annoyed me. They keep around." "Wife, excuse me, what did you say?" "Son, the kids make me tired when they're around." "Son, please don't tell dad." Story 26, one of my sons has a knack for always cursing appropriately. The other day, he got frustrated and said, oh no, I almost said I often have to just leave the room to hide my laughter. To be fair, though, I try not to give the words too much power. My rule is you can curse freely when you're an adult and have things to curse about. Like bills. Story 27, answering for my mom. But whenever my sibling and I got into fights, she would make us have rounds where each round we would have to say one thing we liked about each other. At first, we'd say the most ridiculous things through gritted teeth. The 2 most quoted ones: "Your hair is black," and "Your teeth are straight." Honestly, best compliments ever. Mom tried so hard not to laugh since she was in the stern parent mode. But hey, it worked. Even my sibling and I realized how ridiculous we sounded, that we started to laugh and forgot what we were fighting about. Edit, oh my gosh. I cracked up laughing reading all your replies. Thanks for sharing, everyone. Story 28, my 5-year-old nephew was picking on my 3-year-old son, saying things like I'm older than you, so that makes me smarter too. You're nothing because I'm bigger than you, etc. I was about to step in and reprimand my nephew when my son reared back, lifted his hand into the air to give a typical toddler slap. Instead, he made a fist and punched my brat of a nephew square in the nuts. My nephew crumpled to the ground, crying. My son stepped over him, got down to eye level, and smiling said, "Who's smarter now?" I was one proud daddy. Story 29, my daughter will be 5 years old soon. So she's saying all kinds of crazy. My fiancé. I have some pretty bad potty mouths, though, so sometimes she let a bad word slip every now and then, but it's always in the proper context. One day, a couple of months ago, I accidentally bumped her head while putting her in the car seat. She said, "Oh, I just bumped my noggin," in the saddest little voice she could muster. This huge, dumb, stray cat comes around every now and then. We've named him Hosscat because of his size. Well, he showed up about a month ago, Daddy said. That stupid Hosscat is back outside again. She replies he's not a stupid cat. She saw something new Daddy brought home from work in our kitchen a couple of nights ago, pointed at it, said, "What the is that? My precious darling." Love her little heart. On the bright side, when she says something, we have been able to nip it in the bud right there. But those lines from where she first said them will always be keepers in our memories. Edit changed nip it in the butt to bud. Story 30, my daughter has a fierce personality. She's the perfect combination of my husband's angsty bitterness and my devil-may-care, but I sure as don't bitchiness, now that you know that. Our tale, we're at a mall play place, and they have iPads in there. My then 5-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son are playing happily on 2 of the 4 iPads. The other 2 are unoccupied, and there are maybe half a dozen kids on the play equipment. Eventually, it happens that a little boy about 8 or 9 decides he wants an iPad, not just any iPad, mind you. The one my 3-year-old has. He comes over and tries pushing my kid out of the way. My kid kind of looks at me like, what the, but stays where he is. My daughter pipes up with, "Don't be a bully." 8-year-old kid tries shoving my 3-year-old forcibly, and my daughter stands up and yells, "Stop being mean to my brother." His mom looks at me and chuckles, haha. He really loves that particular iPad. And I'm like, yeah, but there are others he could play with some guidance. Undeterred, this festering loin fruit decides to try and grab my 3-year-old's arm and drag him away. And I begin to stand up to intervene. I didn't have to. My daughter screams, I said no, and knocked him on his. He didn't see it coming at all. Needless to say, his mother rushed over and grabbed him while I grabbed my kids and went the other way. I gave my kid 20 for the candy store and told her that I was proud of her for standing up for her brother. And for the record, these 2 kids fight like GD cats and dogs, but I'm glad they have each other's back when they need it. Story 31. This was actually my little brother. Through most of my childhood, my dad had this thing he would say when he was angry as a warning to my siblings, and I had to shape up, "You better stop that," or "you." And in a fight, we always stopped what we were doing and behaved. One afternoon, the whole family was outside doing yard work, and my little brother, who is 8 years younger than I am, and probably about 4 years old, was doing something he shouldn't true to form my dad tells to quite, "Or you," and I got to fight. My brother didn't skip a beat. He did his best Power Ranger martial arts pose and yells, "Okay." Hi. The rest of the family cracked up. My dad chuckled, and he never really used that expression after that. Story 32. So this apparently happened when I was 4 or so, and I didn't remember until my mom told me about a year or so ago. Essentially, the big school bully was picking on one of my friends, so my entire group jumped him until he backed off. Now my dad was chill, so I played a lot of military games at a young age. When pulled into the office, the principal asked why I was fighting. A little 4-year-old child said I wasn't fighting, I was just neutralizing the threat. I vaguely remember asking the principal what was so funny, and her saying nothing while chuckling, but clearly holding back a good belly laugh. Story 33, not a mom. But when I asked the 5-year-old girl I nanny where she had been earlier that day, she looked me straight in the eyes and said to the show, of course if I laughed she would have repeated it to no end, but it was so hard to keep it in. Story 34, when I was 3 years old my dad needed to go to the bank and brought me with him. Well, I was a curious young lad, so while he was talking to the teller, I went wandering and stumbled upon a cool-looking lever on the wall that I hadn't seen before. Naturally, I pulled it. Naturally, the bank was evacuated due to the fire alarm going off. My dad turned, saw me, and did everything in his power to not himself laughing at my confused little face. Been causing mayhem and pulling pranks ever since. Story 35 today, my 7-year-old was feeling pretty spry after having what he and his brother call Slav dance party time. But that's a whole other story. He took a straw and pretended to snort drugs. then picked up a kaleidoscope and looked through it and said, "Dude, you have to see this. I couldn't stop myself from cracking up." And yeah, thanks a lot, Elementary School Drug Awareness Week. They claim they're trying to demystify drugs, but all I see at home now is heightened interest. Story 36, not my kid, but my sister's. My sister was walking past my 3-year-old niece's bedroom. She peeks in and sees her lying on her stomach, ankles crossed in the air, pretending to read her favorite book called I Love Dogs, I Love Dogs. Reads my niece, "This is so sweet," thinks my sister as a page is turned, "I love dogs." Whoa. What did you say, Ramona? I said I freaking love dogs. The wily little kid even had the sense to censor herself. Story 37, the song Blue Christmas came on the radio, and my boys asked about the title. My oldest knew that blue can mean sad, so he asked if it meant sad Christmas. My youngest asked why anyone would be sad at Christmas. I explained that sometimes holidays are tough because they might remind you of family that have died. This might be the first Christmas without them, and you'll be sad. I explained, yeah, you'll be sad because you won't be getting a gift from them. The dark comedy and timing of it made me so proud, but it's not exactly Facebook material, you know. Story 38, I work at a summer camp, and one week I was put in charge of the day camp. The day camp is made up of kids not old enough to attend the actual camp, so generally 3 to 7, we would sing songs and have a great time. One of the kids in the group always stood out. Not really as a troublemaker, but just the type that wants to have fun no matter what is going on. Whatever we did, he would make it a game, and by golly, he was going to have a great time doing it. Because of his outgoing nature, sometimes we would let him start the songs to sing in the slow moments, and he almost always, without fail, picked the song Little Red Wagon. The lyrics go as follows: "You can't ride my little red wagon, the front seat's broken, and the axle's dragging, pom pom pa pa." He, being a 6-year-old, wasn't very good at speaking yet. So once when singing the song, he's saying, "You can't ride my little red wagon, the front seat's broken, and the dragon, pom pom pa pa." I broke out laughing for probably 5 minutes or so, did everyone else working with us. We eventually calmed down and corrected him on his wording. That kid will live on in legends. Story 39, my then 3-year-old was super into Halloween and everything spooky. One day while sitting in the food court at the mall, we were passed by an elderly woman who was shuffling along, bent over with age, gaunt-faced and sunken-eyed. My daughter's whole face lit up when she saw her, and she started pointing and shouting excitedly, "Zombie, mama, that's a zombie." I almost choked myself trying not to laugh. Story 40 took my 8-year-old daughter to the mall. We're on the second floor, overlooking some shops, when 3 women dressed in black burqa stroll into view. Daughter, look, Grim Reapers. I failed to keep my composure and laughed, but had to tell her it wasn't nice to say that. Story 41 on mobile. So sorry for formatting, not a parent, but I'm 20 at this point, and my aunt who babysat me while I was younger loves to tell this story. Me, a 3-year-old, want to go play outside. Aunt, you have to go put your coat and shoes on first. Me, okay, puts on shoes and coat. Walks to the door and opens it. Sees that it's raining. Me, it's raining. "And what did you just say?" "Me, I love you." Aunt bursts out laughing. Well, it's not as a parent, but as a child. But 20 years later, my mother still cries of laugh when she remembered it. When I was 3 at school, the mistress wanted us to draw Santa. I like to draw, but for a reason, I always paint it all in blue. And what should happen happened. I painted a blue Santa. The mistress went absolutely mad and called my parents to tell them about it. She spent like 30 million shouting at them because I wasn't correctly raised or whatever. When I came back home, I was so pissed off I took a red pen and quickly redrawed a red Santa, grumbling something like PFFFF, I know how to do a red Santa too, while my mother was dying of laugh. Story 42, some boy in my stepdaughter's class kept calling her daddy during recess, even after she told him to stop numerous times and even told the teachers. So she slapped him across his face. Story 43, late to the party. But here goes. I am a parent, but I wasn't in this case. I was 17. My baby sister was 2. She was standing on the stairs, screaming at my mother at the top of her lungs. My mother turns around and says, "Who in the do you think you're talking to?" Any normal kid realizes this is the danger zone, and you stop and apologize immediately, otherwise face the wrath of mom. My sister kept going, stands there, plants her feet, puts her hands on her hips, and spits with as much attitude and venom a 2-year-old can muster. I was talking to you. The world stopped for a second, and I ran from my room to 1, not see the carnage, and 2, laugh my off. Wouldn't you know I got my beat for that, because she had to have learned it from me. I was the kid in this story, so I was a very dramatic child growing up, so I'd usually sigh or make similar noises until someone would ask what was wrong. That day I wander up to my mom and start the sighing, and she finally asks what's wrong. I tell her my cousin got in trouble again today. She asked what he did, and I just looked her dead in the face and said, "Nah, I don't think so, mother." She likes to tell the story. I think it was 4 to 5 years old. Story 44, driving my MIL around with my wife and 2 years old in the back of the minivan. was trying to tone down the swearing since she was starting to imitate us. Someone cut me off while driving, and I shout son of a, and then catch myself and stop before going too far. From the back of the car, in the clearest little toddler voice, comes Beich, perfectly timed. I started to laugh, but then got the stare of death from the wife, and had to stop. Story 45. My dad has dated the same woman for like 15 years. She has 4 kids by previous partners, the eldest of which is 2 4-year-old twin boys. My dad sees these kids as his grandkids, and he works with the daughter's husband, so sees them daily. Recently, my dad and his GF split, and mine and my dad's dog Elvis of 13 years sadly had to be put down around the same time. Unbeknownst to my dad, his GF had the kids over at the weekend, and they noticed the dog's absence. Instead of her telling them the dog was at Papa's house, as was usual for a weekend since the split, she tried to gently explain to them the dog had passed, and why he was now in a jar on the mantel. I think she handled it very well. However, she did neglect to explain to the kids that my dad was really upset over his dog passing. So my dad strolls up to the house Monday morning ready for work, and is greeted by the daughter husband and twins. One of the twins goes, "Oh, Papa, do you know Elvis is dust?" My dad didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Story 46. Hard to limit to one. My eldest daughter was attacked by our huge ginger cat around the age of 2. She'd seen relatives use rolled-up newspaper to discipline their pets. So she disappears into the kitchen and comes back dragging our rolling pin across the floor. A few months later, she's being picked on by a 4-year-old at daycare. He corners her and doesn't let her get out, so she knocks him out with a single punch. Tried so very hard not to laugh on the phone or in person when I came to collect her. At the age of 3, she wanted something from the dairy, so she pickpocketed my wallet from my back pocket. I was wearing jeans, and I didn't feel a thing. So proud. Couldn't praise her with her mom glaring at me. Age of 5. She's offered a sweet lily from a bowl by an auntie, so she grabs one with her fingers and definitely naturally palms a couple more. I was the only one who saw it from my vantage point. The aunt and other kids were oblivious. She's now 15 and hasn't been arrested yet. Does that mean she's gotten better behaved or just not caught? Who knows? Story 47. My son has speech pathology, which he's hating. He was crying that he didn't want to talk about cars anymore. I told him it wasn't a problem. Would ask the speech therapist to talk about something else. His dad chimes in, "Yeah. Tell her you want to talk about boobies." My son followed through with this idea. Story 48. Not a parent, just an older sibling. When my little brother was in 2nd grade, he was asked to draw an invention of the future and write a few sentences about it. Of course, he decided to draw a car with pack-like things that would turn your farts into gas to power the car. The teacher had to call my mom in. I could tell that both my mom and the teacher were trying really hard not to laugh. Story 49. Not a parent, but my brother once memorized his friend's gift card number 14 to 16 digits. So he could get a membership for an online game. He didn't write it down, and we know that because he recited it to my dad later. I was pretty impressed. TLDR, my brother stole a gift card from his friend without physically stealing the card. Story 50. Not my kid, but my 7-year-old brother needed our mom's signature on an assignment for school. He said he did it for her, so she wouldn't have to. He wrote "Mom" in crayon. I laughed way more than I should have. Story 51. My son, not quite 3 yet, knows how to curse, knows when a curse word actually fits into a sentence, and knows it's a bad word when he says it. There is absolutely nothing funnier than watching a 2-year-old drop a toy, pick it up, drop it again, and say quietly, "Well." He also was being told phrases to run over and tell me by his dad the other day. His dad would say, "Go tell mommy she's pretty." Son runs over and says, "You're pretty." Standard stuff. Well, I guess he got told along home, because he runs over, looks at me, and yells "fuck," and runs back to his dad to ask what he was supposed to say. We both just buckled in laughter.